Welcome to Conversations with Joy podcast.
So when we left off last time, I was going to come back and you talked about your wonderful beloved son's story. And I want to tell you about, it's really connected with how we started out with Dion. And when we go back again, the title is Radical Forgiveness and Grief. And what came to mind, I was so excited to come back and share with you my experience of radical forgiveness. So you do remember me saying that, I don't remember the year, but 2007, my youngest son, Dion, the age of 25, was in motorcycle school in Florida. And of course, some people say, why does he have a motorcycle? And I said, that's his passion. That's what he wants to do with his life. So there. And so now you already got a key, something happened on the motorcycle. So in any event, it was interesting. The last 2 months before he passed away, he would reconnect with his dad. They had got their relationship back on track. He was 2 weeks before he died in that accident. He wrote an email to me. Now, my son didn't write emails. I didn't know he had a computer, but he wrote an email to me that said, thank you for restructuring my life. And I went, he knew that word. And he said, you're just the best mom ever. And I want to thank you. And then the accident happened. And it was so surreal. He calls me that day and he says, Mom, I had an argument with my professor. I almost lost my finger because he was yelling. And I said, well, honey, just breathe through that and it'll be okay and go about your day. And that might have been 1:00 in the afternoon. About 5:00, I got a call from the police and they came to my door and they said, there's been an accident. And I went, your son's in the hospital and we don't know how well he's doing. So I said, okay, thank you. I went upstairs, I get a change of underwear and a toothbrush. I jumped on the first plane. I got to where he was. And this reminds me again of your story, is we're there waiting and he's hooked up to all this equipment and there's blood falling from I got that picture, coming from the bottom of the bed into a pool on the floor. And something stepped in, like you and I always talk about the stepping in and making space. And the voice kneeled over to him and said, through my vehicle, if you're finished with your work, you can leave. Now, later when I recall that, I went, what mother says that? I'm supposed to say, stay, please. You bargain. I said, it wasn't me. Some higher consciousness said that to him. I got his father on the phone because he wasn't present in my mind. And we were there with him. And as soon as we left, as many people who are dying, transitioning, they die after you've left the room. So the story I want to say was what happened was a tow truck impeded his right of way by making a left-hand turn. So imagine on a motorcycle, you make a left-hand turn, there's nowhere to go. And so he hit it and he died less than 24 hours later. So my radical forgiveness piece to that, I had several of them, but the one I want to share on this episode is I found myself in school getting a doctorate in ministry. I signed up 2 weeks after his death. And let me tell you, I was still in shock. And when I say the word I found myself, it meant I don't know how I got there. I mean, obviously I bought the ticket and signed up for the class, but it really wasn't me. And so the classes, there were 2 classes that were available. One was about death and dying, who knew? And the other one was a work-related course. So I'm going through the classes and there are 6 people in the class. Wouldn't it be interesting that the other 5 people, one gentleman had lost his daughter, so he was grieving. Another person in the class, their fiance died. So 3 of the 6 of us were in grief, and so felt very supported. So let me just fast forward from that time frame, 2 months from that class date when I found myself in a class, I think it was Asheville, by the way. And And before I went into class, I had this notion to call my lawyer to get the number of the gentleman who caused the accident. And he said, "What do you want his number for?" I said, "Well, I want to forgive him." He said, "What?" He said, "Well, I can't give you his number, but I can give you his address." And I went, "Okay, that'll work." And I'm sitting in my car still waiting for class to begin. And I began writing a letter in the car to forgive this gentleman. And then I'm ready to go to class. So I go into class, and what was interesting was the professor had us in a circle. And I don't even remember the topic, but it's probably something spiritual. And at one point, I found myself walking to the center of the circle and laying like this on the floor, closing my eyes and telling that story, and that how I wanted to connect with him and forgive him. And I don't know, I'm babbling on, who knows, but at some point in my story, with my eyes closed on the floor, I felt this golden, golden rain, or like a confetti would be like, what it would feel like to folks, but just this spiritual golden light. And I kept talking until that stopped. And then I made my way back to my seat, and I was numb for a while. And people were talking, but I didn't hear them. But what I did hear was one of the last voices saying, "If she can forgive him, who can I not forgive?" And that has stayed with me. And I tell this story so people can see, not to say that there's anything great about how I experienced it, but rather as a reporter. I want to report that these are some options that came to me by just being my authentic self and being vulnerable and transparent to say what's so for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, honey, that's such a profound experience. And it's interesting that both of us have experienced that golden rain.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's int So did this happen before or after you read the book Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping?
Oh, before, years before. Dion passed away in 2007, and I only found the book Radical Forgiveness a couple of years ago. I didn't even know about it.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't like forgiving to match something someone else said in their experience. It was just being available for mine. In fact, if I'm getting chills right now, so it's in fact before Dion's accident, I was in an accident. And I want you to hear the big context of this is I was given many, let me just say, several experiences that led me to being able to radically forgive. So, for example, believe it was maybe 2002 or 3, I had left my home in Georgia, moved in with my brand new husband in New Jersey. I kept the Georgia house, and we're in New Jersey. And bright sunny day, I get in the car. I had a call to make with a client, but I said, "Oh, I can take these video games back." And I strap into my car, and I'm driving down the street like 20 miles an hour, seatbelt on, no phone, no distraction. And this is my hometown, by the way, from years ago. So I keep looking at each street to say, where do I make that turn? Where do I make that turn? And boom, the lights were all green until they weren't. And I hit an SUV, and I'm in a 2-seater convertible. I flipped over an SUV. The ambulance came. We get into the ambulance together. And he survived, thank goodness. I only had a contusion on my hand. The Beamers, his little commercial for Beamers, very solid to the ground. Anyway, who did I hit? A lawyer. I gotta tell you, I hit a lawyer. So anyway, I know how it felt to try to get in touch with him years before Dion passed away to see how he was doing. And my insurance company said, "You can't talk to him. You can't talk to him." And I went, but it was I wouldn't say I was reckless. I was, everything was, I'm looking.
Right.
The lights were green, and it happened.
Yeah.
And so I said, whatever he needs, give it to him. So after a year, we're in court together. I didn't get a ticket. No, nobody got a ticket. But the judge, I'd tell the judge, he said, "What's your name?" I said, "Joy." He goes, "What's your last name?" "I don't have one." Joy stands for serve Jesus first, others second, yourself last, okay? And the lawyer's cracking up. I mean, he wanted to sue the insurance company. He said he couldn't have relationships with his wife because of the accident. That's not funny. He's a lawyer. He is trying. Anyway, the judge went, "Oh, girl, okay, you're good. Look, you need what I don't know what else he said. He said, "You're good. You can go. There's no tickets." And my insurance company did, compensate him, of course, for pain and suffering. But when I looked back, I went, "Wow, you're able to I made the connection. You were worried about someone in an accident that you were a part of. And now something's happened to your son." I mean, all this is unconscious stuff. So that what comes out is the action I chose to take, which, by the way, didn't seem like I had a choice. I just let what needed to happen happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the way you spoke to Dion when you first saw him, if you're finished with your work, it's okay to leave. Like, that's so profound for to hear yourself saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't think about what I had said until later. I went, "Girl," like being back to my own, "Girl, who would say that? Why didn't you bargain?" And I said, "You stepped out of the way for your higher self to act on your behalf for your good and others who were around me, and the dad who was on the phone who couldn't make it, and Dion's spirit if it was in the room or whatever. You just don't have to be willful. Ego gets us in a lot of trouble. And for me, EGO stands for edging God out. So in both of our stories, we weren't edging God out by pontificating about who knows what. We let happen, and then submit it. It's like submitting to what needs to be said at this moment. And what a blessing.
And that truly, to me, what you just described is the definition of what makes us prepared to engage in radical forgiveness. When you step aside, when the ego steps aside and lets your higher self move through you, that's the prerequisite for radical forgiveness.
Like, who knew, okay? I'm going to call our guy and say, "Hey." Oh, I'm so glad you wrote the book, because at least we gave the terms come from him. The title.
Right.
Did I read the book? No. I think I read a couple pages and went, "Okay, I got it. My bad." But, I will at some point, those of you listening, I'll go back and read the book. And also trust. Here's what I love. You forgot. Remember. So people often ask me, Joy, how long does it take? I mean, how long am I going to be in this grief state? And my response is, everyone's different, because all of the journeys you've had leading up to the loss of a child or a parent or a good friend or your job or a relationship or our political situation. Here's the thing about grief. Typically, they say 2 years. However, when I graduated from ministry, what I noticed was I then gave myself up to making sure that other parents whose children had died, that they could get the knowledge and the practice that I had been given. So I would host sessions weekly in my home. And for example, there was a woman who'd been grieving the loss of her daughter for 25 years. So that's to give you an answer about how long. 25 years. I know a person now who's in my circle, and this woman her husband died 9 years ago. 9 years. Some people hold on to the grief and feel guilty if they move on.
Right.
And so there's things like holotropic breathwork that's helped, poetry, artwork, meditating. Why don't you jump in there and say some of your pieces and maybe how long it's taken you?
Absolutely. For me, when my son Logan died, I was soon after became a single mother. I was at that time putting myself through school, so working full time, single mom, putting myself through school. And Spirit told me, you are responsible for your other children. You are responsible for all these things. But the most important work you're going to do right now is your grief work. So I got a journal. I journaled. I gave myself permission to, I went to 2 yoga classes a week, sat in the back, cried my way through class. I had specific appointments with
Yes.
myself
Yes.
to allow the grief to move through my body.
Mhm.
Grief grief can only be metabolized through moving the body. You can't
Yes.
sit there and think and do your grief work.
Right.
And so for me, it was the 2 years were the most intense.
Yes.
But
Yes.
that doesn't mean, I mean, my son's birthday, Logan's birthday is coming up in a couple weeks, and
Mhm.
I'm already preparing
Yeah.
for what I am going to do for myself that
Yes.
day to
Yes.
honor him, to honor myself, to honor our love. It's
Mhm.
not a regular work day for me.
Right. Right.
So
I love that. When I guess mine was 18 months, and it was because I got into school and I had all this support. And our courses were all over the world. And there were miracles every class, one of which I shared about the golden rain. Another was I, at the last minute, got into a class that was full. I was going to go to Florida for an art class. And instead, I went to Turkey for 2 weeks. And I remember we had holotropic breathwork as an activity. And I'm just going to slow down for a minute and think about this. And remember, holotropic breathwork is without drugs, you're breathing with your own body. And there were about 20 students and 20 sitters, meaning while I'm going under, just with music, closing my eyes and breathing rapidly so I could go into some of those places in my spirit and psyche. And I remember coming out of this. First of all, I did feel Dion's presence over my head as the tears were rolling down my face. And then we get into a little group where you talked about your experience. And I said, I saw Jesus' face. I saw a couple of other saints. And I don't remember what else I said, but that was what the pictures, that really sticks with me. And so, and I said I was supposed to like breathe 2 days earlier. And they said, I think I obviously saw Mother Mary, and they said, "Do you know what today is?" And I went, "August 13th. It's Mother Mary's Assumptive Day." I said, "What?" And
no,
so,
wow.
and the picture of her that I saw, she was brown. So, as soon as I got finished the class, I went on my computer. I'm looking for a brown Mother Mary because in my mind she must be white. And I find nothing, no dark Mother Mary. So I went, "Oh, Joy, you just wanted to be dark because you're dark." And I left it at that. So a couple months later, when I took the class, which was to Ephesus in Turkey, that's her last home. Okay, miracle too. And now, see, I'm getting chills now because as I walked up the path to her last resting place, oh my goodness, I look up and there's the brown face in a statue. There's the picture that I didn't see online, that I've never seen in my life, was the picture I had seen when I did the breathing. And I mean, I went, oh my goodness. I mean, I had blessings like that for 18 months, including the 20 papers wrote themselves, the courses chose themselves. The dissertation is this thick. I'm not a writer, I'm a talker, if you hadn't noticed. And someone said, "You got a doctorate, wrote 3 books in 18 months while you were grieving?" I said, "Yes." And I said, "Just to prove it, I'm going to get into another doctoral program," which as of this date, 7 years to get a second doctorate. And I'm ABD, meaning I never did a dissertation. So I knew it wasn't me. But I'm glad to have been a vessel to get the messages to be able to write a book called Moving Toward Wholeness.
Which is a beautiful book. I love that book.
Thank you. And Crying for Joy. and faith lessons all came through the portal. And I remember when it ended, I said, okay, Mother Mary, where are you? Wait, where you go? She went wherever she went, but
Do you know, Joy, I have to tell you this. My grief teacher, the Francis Weller, who I trained with to do these grief retreats, he trained with Sobonfu Somé and Maradoma Somé of the Jagara tribe in Africa. And what they believe is, first of all, that when a loss happens to any member of the tribe, it happened to the entire tribe. So the entire tribe comes together to hold grief ceremonies to help the person who had the loss.
Yes.
And their daily work is taken away from them so that they can be in the inquiry, because it's said that whenever a member of the tribe has a major loss, that person is going to have medicine or some kind of gift for the entire tribe. And within 2 years, that person who had the loss is expected to bring forth wisdom to the entire tribe. And this is what you did in that 18 months.
Yeah.
What you did.
Yeah. Thank you. I may have mentioned to you earlier that years, I don't know, maybe decades, let's just say decades ago, I got some message. I wasn't even knowing where messages were coming from, but I remember saying to people, because I have happy moments and I tell everybody, and I keep telling everybody. And if someone said, you told me, I said, okay, don't you want to hear it again differently? And because if you share a happy moment, it's doubled. For me, it's exponential, because I will tell 100 people the same story. And if you have a sad story and you share it, it's divided. Like the community takes some of that. And that's why you're right. When I was hosting those sessions for parents who've lost children, one gentleman, he lost his daughter, an alligator got her in Florida. I mean, some of these losses are so dramatic and tragic. And anyway, that's something I would just like to say to folks. Share more.
Yeah.
Don't worry about hiding who you are and being shamed about however it happens. Share what's true for you, because you will find such empathy, such compassion, such comfort. I mean, you mentioned joining Compassionate Friends last time we spoke. I, too, went to Compassionate Friends and found a lot of support and compassion and just safe space to be a container for the grief and the feelings that, I was feeling physiologically and spiritually, mentally and emotionally. So we all need this community. My biggest vision for our podcast on radical forgiveness and grief is to have a community that expands and that shares with one another the particular loss, but also all the losses we're feeling today. Like, for example, your 401ks. I mean, really?
Yes. Yeah.
Or neighbors who could get scooped up wrongfully and deported. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I feel like we are really in a time where if we are not keeping ourselves resilient, it's like our responsibility to do all of the tasks we need to do to keep ourselves going and survive. And something that has been added to my to-do list is to keep myself resilient.
Yes.
One of my teachers, Lucia Renee, talks about navigating this time. She gave us this wisdom in December of 2019. And she said that in the years to come, change and challenge would be coming so rapidly that we would need to, instead of that feeling when we're lying down on the ground and we feel the solidity of the ground, or we're standing on the ground and we feel the solidity, she said, that has served us well. That earth element way of feeling centered and grounded and balanced. But now we need to have the experience of riding on an air current like the hawk,
Yes.
or being on a surfboard and riding the currents of the waves. And she said, bring in a little bit of that movement into your visualization so that you won't be thrown off kilter. And I have to say, I think that's really important. Another thing I'll share is that a few weeks ago, um, I I attended a Zoom where a leader was guiding us through a heart coherence visualization. And I've led those before. I've taught them before. Oh, it's beautiful. So you connect deeply with the core of the earth and with the land, right? And you send your love down, and automatically you open to love returning. Love flowing up and into the body, bottom to top. And then you connect your attention to the warmth of the sun, the beauty of the moon, the magic of the Milky Way. And then you go all the way past all of the universes to what the yogis call the womb of the dark mother, that origin point from which all life comes. And you float there for a while, and then you come back down in. You carry some of your soul's blueprint. You have this yang energy from the star nations, and that flows top to bottom. And then these two energies from the core of the earth that recognizes the energy from the stars, from the land, that more yin, quiet energy, that recognizes the energy from the dark mother. And the two of them then begin to swirl and dance and fill your body with life force. So once your body is running full life force, then you just bring all of your attention to the heart, and just imagine that you're breathing in and out of your heart center. And at some point, when you're really deeply in your own heart coherence, at some point you can imagine that you are connected through this grid of light to everyone else around our planet who is also in heart coherence. Well, as she guided us through this, I saw myself connected in this beautiful web of light. And as soon as I felt that connection, I had the thought, go ahead and reconnect to the dark mother and the core of the earth. And as soon as I made that vertical connection with this horizontal connection I was feeling, I heard a voice that said, "What do you need?"
Yeah.
And right now I'm holding some concerns for the safety of my trans child. And so I said, I need safety. I need stability. I need continuity. And this voice says, oh, love, that's not on offer for your timeline. I was just like, well, okay. What? And it said, go into your heart. What does your heart need? And instantly, my heart responded love. And I felt suffused with, enfolded about by, fueled by a quality of love that I recognized. And Dr. Joy, I recognized that this is the quality of love that sustained me in the hospital in those 3 days between the accident and when Logan died in our arms. And for weeks afterwards, when everyone we knew was praying for us, this was the love. This was the love that carried us. Now, it's true that grief is painful. It's true. It's true that loss is painful. But there's a way in which a loss that breaks you down, a loss that breaks your heart open, also opens your heart to love.
More love.
And And I look back on the 2 years that followed my son's death and see that I grew more in all the ways, intellectually,
Yes,
emotionally,
yes.
spiritually. I developed a yoga practice. I mean, I grew more during that time than any other time in my life. And I believe that we are called in the United States right now. We are receiving an experience similar to that kind of loss. We are called forth to be our best selves,
Yes.
to develop some discipline, develop a practice, and to recognize this is a loss. If we grieve it, we are opening our hearts to love, to being supported by not just our biological ancestors. I am supported during this time by my spiritual ancestors that include John and Abigail Adams, that include Benjamin Franklin, that include our founding fathers and mothers of this democracy.
Yes. 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 And also, how about the service that we've been called to do?
Oh, yeah.
That I don't know if I would be doing it. I don't have an answer for that. I mean, inviting people over to talk about the stages and what they're going to go through and what their rights are as a griever. Someone could maybe say to you after 2 years, I'd like you to come to a party, and you say yes out of obligation. And I tell people, there's a code. You don't have to go. If it's 5 minutes before, you can say, not this time, and you can make a pass without any shame or excuses. Yes, there's a lot. There's just a lot to unpack here, and I mean, we will continue to work through these episodes to just be of service to others. And by the way, if you notice, as we're giving, we're receiving. I know I'm getting so much from sharing with you, and just
Same.
and reporting back testimonies that we can we can talk about them. We keep our sons alive. By the way, they're so ever present because we're not like, let's not talk about it. It might hurt someone's No, talk about it. Dion's right here. Logan's right there, here.
Yes.
It's all the same. Yeah. Well, it calls me to remember, maybe we should do could do a podcast on this whole heart experience where we can,
Absolutely.
where we can do the connection. Yeah, do
Absolutely.
you want to do it now? We have time?
Sure. Sure. Let's do it.
Hold on. Before we do. Yeah, question.
I just have one question.
Yes.
And is that if I'm an audience and I'm listening to you guys, is like, of course, they have all the tools. They're smart, they have all these books, they have all this knowledge, they have money, but what do I do?
Yeah.
If I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Do you hear that?
What are the baby steps for
Yeah, that's very good.
I don't have a support group.
Yeah, I have nothing. Yeah.
My baby steps,
Yeah. Well, let me tell you. When Logan died, I was a single mom, very little child support, putting myself through school. I was in the poverty level.
Yeah, but I'm saying this because that's what by listening to you guys, is like,
That's what people will
the other side.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah.
Other side. I'm starting. I'm clueless. What are my baby steps?
Okay, let's talk about baby steps then.
Yeah.
So, and I think what I can do is go back to earlier deaths, to go to maybe ages, other generations, and talk about, as a 34-year-old, my brother. I want to call him oldest brother. He's the oldest of the boys, but he was the fourth of 5. And he died in 1984, I believe, from recollection, and he was becoming a chiropractor. And that was when AIDS was beginning. So no treatments, and we didn't even know about it. And I remember my dad being mad at me, saying, I didn't know he was gay. And I went, he's not gay. I mean, why you say, well, you can only get it if you had a transfusion, or you were gay, or you were I get the third thing. And I went, he was none of those. So I'm just not going to listen to that theory of so you'd be fearful. And we had 14 months before he actually died. And one of the best lessons he told me from his wheelchair, he said, Joy, if I had only known to accept it sooner, I could have suffered less.
Yeah.
And that's from someone who had no tools. He's dying. He was 25 in school, and that was so profound that, again, pieces of the puzzle that come to you throughout your life, that you can make those connections, that's what he said. And he prepared himself. His name was Bernie Hall. And again, he's present. And if I would think about baby steps in that, I do know I acted out like some of our viewers may do. After the funeral, I remember driving home with my little 5-year-old, and I was, not in my body. And as I made a left-hand turn to get into my mom's home, I was in an accident. Look at this series of accidents, by the way. Dion passed. Dion was in that accident with me. Nobody got hurt. But I got out the car and I said, I can't believe you left me with these people. I'm shouting at the sky in the heavens. I was just so distraught. I didn't know which way to go. I had nobody to talk to. I didn't do the things we're sharing. I didn't know to do them. I didn't have a support group. People didn't talk about it. They didn't talk about how they died, what happened, how you're doing it. Nothing, no support groups in 1984. So here we are almost 40 years later,
Right.
of having had many other people leave, lost jobs ourselves, lost our parents have died. And yes, if we sound like we're wise women who can give you the answer, forget about it. We have had and lived at younger ages, how to cope. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing the podcast. So you don't have to go through all that. You can do some practicing. So I'm going to ask Melody to start off with 3 baby steps she's used throughout her life with loss, and I'll do the same.
Well, I think the first one, when I was 34 years old, I realized that my mother was dying. And I went to the library because when I'm faced with a difficult experience like childbirth, I read books. I asked mother, I wanted to prepare myself. Well, this was something I felt unprepared. At that time, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying was the only book available, which I read several times. I happened to know a friend at church who was the first female funeral director in the state of Tennessee, where I lived then. And she took me under her wing. She taught me what she knew. She made suggestions, which I followed. So I think the first step for me was when I was facing a loss, I tried to prepare myself. I tried to, I listened to people who knew what they were doing in that domain. Yeah, that was the first one.
Yeah. Well, I would say my first one really goes back to, I had an experience when I was maybe 3. Well, I couldn't have been in a crib at 3. Whatever I was in a crib, and I'm probably out of the crib by 2. But I remember a voice that said, "You're Pat this time, remember." Remember what? In other words, something was telling me that you were here before. Now, those of you who don't know, I changed my name 25 years ago because the voice said, "I know you like being Pat," and I do and did. It said, "Change your name to Joy and don't have any other names." Okay, and of course I said, "What? I'm a public speaker. I can't change my name. That's a dumb thing to do. I'm not doing it." But I kept being haunted somehow by it. Okay, so then I changed my voicemail and said, "This is Pat Carver." Next time it said, "This is Pat Joy Carver," because Joy was never a given name. Then I would move into, "This is Joy Carver," until I finally ended with, "This is Joy." Wasn't a Dr. Joy, I was Joy. And I just embraced it. And then other gifts came from the name change. People said, "You know what joy means?" I said, "Okay, I know you're going to tell me. What does it mean?" The J stands for serve Jesus first, others second for the O, and yourself last. I went, "Oh, why did the message come through like that? I'd have done it right away. I'd have obeyed immediately." I like that. But what's interesting is, again, I want everybody to know you all have the voice. It's nothing special to Melody and I. Everybody has a voice. It's just, when are you going to stop talking long enough to hear the voice? Putting yourself in peaceful situations where you can, like with the earth, to hear what's already there. Remember my phrase early, as a spiritual being, you forgot, remember, period. Oh, I'm getting chills. So true. I don't know any more than you know. Truly. It's just I have access, and you have access too. So start accessing.
And I will say my second tool for as a baby step is follows up on yours, and it's put yourself in environments where you can hear that voice.
Yeah.
Now, my number one environment used to be yoga classes. And, I've been very blessed to have beautiful yoga environments.
Yeah.
Now, at this age of 70, my number one environment is nature.
Yes.
I live in the mountains. When I go hiking, that's my number one place where I stop talking and I start listening. And it never fails that if I go with a question, if I have something on my heart, there will be answers that come.
Absolutely. Well, you remind me of my first, this was way back in my 20s and 30s, was I would call it my happy place, my going inside place, is the bathtub. Now, maybe everybody didn't have a bathtub, but I just got into the bathtub with the water and maybe some candles and to drink and water to drink. And I just would cry or laugh. And when I was quiet, I would get messages on how to do a class the next day. I would get answers. I wasn't even asking questions. I didn't know you should ask a question. So I was just there and I would get these ideas as if they were like mine. That's the ego, right? Again. And I would just listen. I would be still. And now I've moved into the garden in the backyard, looking at flowers. And same thing, nature, going back to Gaia, to Mother Earth. And I think another step I had was I've always believed, and it happened to be Jesus is my guy. And I say that because my ministry doctorate is about having studied all religions. So I welcome and include all faiths because to me it's like the palm of the hand. Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, agnosticism, everything. But all the paths lead to the center, to the source, to what you call God. And for many, God is nature, or God is music, or God is service. So not getting hung up with what political party you're in or what religion you practice. Believe in something. Practice something. It's like when you do, you'll be surprised. I think this is like word comes from the Bible. One thing begets another thing.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a little commercial for something I've recently discovered is called Stretch Zone. I mean, 40 years ago, I used to buy the little DVDs on stretching. Did I ever turn them on? No. I had them. They were inexpensive, but did I ever play them and stretch? No. So recently, someone advertised, come and get a free hour of stretching. And I went, okay, free. Okay, we'll go get it. And right away, assisted stretching, which you can do with your family members, where they'll take you further than you're able to go.
Right.
I got to tell you, girl, walking around, getting into the hot tub, moving is so easy. So after 2 months, yesterday I declared, I'm going to go back to LA Fitness, which is free for seniors. I said, wait, where'd that come from? I mean, you haven't worked out in since COVID, a long time, because James. I said, you're going to do what? Yeah, I'm going to go. So when I say one thing begets another thing, when you have a belief, no matter what it is, get into it, move it, share it, something else will show up. I wasn't looking for the ride to LA Fitness. I'm promising you, I can work out in my house. I got a little walker down, treadmill down there, and I got a pool out there. But no, your body is intelligent.
Right.
Your body, I don't care how many degrees you have or don't have, folks, the body, every cell is intelligent. I'm not going to give you the stats on how many times your cell regenerate, blah, 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 blah. You could look that up, Google it. But the fact that when your body's doing something it loves, it wants more. It wants to do something else. And
Right.
so I'm going to accommodate it so that my mind gets in the way going, it could go, nah, you don't need to do that. You're old. Who cares? I went, that voice is gone. I said, okay, you want to go to lift weights? Okay, I'm going to walk you to do some weights today. But that's the magic of having a belief, sharing your belief, being open to other people's beliefs, not as a mine's better than yours, but rather as something I can learn from Buddhism, which, of course, for me was to learn to suffer less, to be in service of others so that they suffer less. That's one of their tenets. And to really know religions is to know all of them fundamentally talk about love one another.
Yes.
Mystery there.
Mm-mm. No. And I will say for me, the third baby step would be questions.
Yes.
It would be questions. When I was still in a very rigid cult with very dogmatic right and wrong and, fear of straying over the line, my 9-year-old daughter came running up to me, and she was a reader. She loved reading, and she was reading a book, and she said, "Mom, listen to this." And it was a poem. And she read me these words, and I asked her to write them down in her 9-year-old handwriting, and I still carry that with me today. Here's the poems.
Okay.
Know all of the questions, but never the answers. Look for the different instead of the same. Never walk where there's room for running, and don't do anything that can't be a game. And that just, she read it with such earnestness, and that just flipped we got to do life right. We've got to stay on the straight and narrow. Just flipped it over. And I'm going to fast forward from that, which was in the 80s, to, after 97, when my son died, a dear mentor said, Melody, because I was just grieving the loss of this 17-year-old who had such potential. And he said, what if Logan was complete with his work here? What if you held the inquiry, the question? What if you held the question that perhaps did Logan's soul choose the timing of his death? And did your soul agree to that before you took birth? And, holding that inquiry made all the difference. So for me, sometimes if I can't find my way to a belief, I will simply hold an inquiry. I will simply ask myself questions. And the questions are expansive.
Yes. Yeah, that's like the journaling is key. That's it's not just a baby step, that's a big step. I tell people who say, I don't have time to journal. I said, you have a phone and you have a text piece in the phone and you can just write to yourself. And because writing what's going on inside of you. I mean, I did the other day, I had 7 blessings and I wrote, I don't do it all the time, but I wrote, what an amazing day, 7 blessings. 7's an important number. And it was like, you're finally going to commit to the party and you're going to work with this group with Legos and you're going to go to Florida because you were sharing with one of your CEOs that you wanted to invite him to the party. He said, let me show you the new house I bought in Florida that I'm never going to be. And I went, wow, I got another place to go play. I mean, 7 beautiful things. And I went, wow, so record those. And I can also record things like, I'm a little sad today, and I'm sad for these reasons. So what's causing the sadness? Not what automatically comes to mind. Go a little deeper. It's like the 5 whys. So why? And you get a response, and so why? Just asking 5 whys to get to a deeper core experience on how I'm experiencing an experience. And getting out of how I'm experiencing it, if it's with someone else, give space empathizing how they're experiencing it.
Yeah.
That just opens up so much capacity for love and forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I really believe that we are meant as humans to go up and down this continuum with ease. And I love those 5 whys. You taught them to me years ago. And sometimes if I'm just hovering around the midline, but I know there's something
More.
bothering me, I will ask those questions and go all the way down and feel what is there for me to integrate.
Yes.
Because the moment we've recognized it, the moment we can feel it, that lets us begin our ascent again.
Yes. So I do practice meditation, which is sitting quiet for 20 minutes. Usually twice a day is most effective, but just get at least 20 minutes in where you're quiet and you're silent. And there's information on meditation everywhere. I would just simply say, without buying anything or going anywhere, sit quietly, knowing that you have 20 minutes to do it. You can set a timer at first because your body will acclimate to what 20 minutes is later. They don't want you being jarred by an alarm. But you're just simply quiet, and you can use one syllable, Om, the universal one, if you want. And then when your monkey mind starts saying, oh, I should be making dinner, you don't resist that. You just let the thoughts come and flow, and you come back to the mantra, constantly repeating internally, Om. Okay, I give you that one, and I got to tell you a new one I have from Wayne Dwyer. He's recently passed away, and I came across, a CD. Who uses CDs? I came across a CD. I have a CD player, and I put it on at night. And he tells you in the first 10 minutes, the universal name for God is I am that I am. And he says, change the word that to what you want to manifest. And I've had some back pain, of course, a little bit here, a little bit there. I don't get stuck on the pain. And I say now, I am perfect health. I am. And I have a testimony to tell you that before doing that every day for the last few months, every time I got up, I was in pain in the morning, every morning without fail, going to the bathroom until I took my shower. I must tell you, don't feel it anymore. Now, you can say, well, maybe you're eating better. No, not doing that. You go to the gym. No, didn't start yet, remember? I'm simply saying that mantra all day, especially at night, and I'm listening to the sounds. You hear him for 10 minutes, then he's got 2 20-minute tracks that's just universal tonal sounds that people have researched to help your body heal. And I say, on the inhale, I am perfect health. On the exhale, I am. As if you're talking to God back and forth. Inhale, coming to you. Exhale, going back out to God. That's my latest. And I'm always going to give you what my latest is as I keep the other meditation practices going. What about you, my girl?
Well, I'm going to share something I've done since I was 14 years old.
Yes.
When I was 14, I was in my Aunt Pearl's house, and she had a book on yoga. And I read that book and loved it and started doing a pranayama. And you can do it one of 2 ways. I do it outside. I actually do it while I'm walking in the neighborhood. It's a bit odd. It looks a bit odd. But, I've lost my concern for what the neighbors think a long time ago. So one way to do it is you're just taking some long, deep breaths, really inhaling, exhaling deeply. The navel point comes all the way in toward the spine, and then inhaling deeply, at least 3 of those. And then on your next inhale, you fill up the lungs as full as they can go and hold the breath in. No tension in the throat. You're just suspending the breath with the breath held in, which expands the alveoli, all the parts of the lungs are now expanded. And while the breath is held in, you take your fist and you just pound on the chest, the ribs, the back, as far as you can get it. So I'm going to show you that's exactly what it looks like. So you really inhale. and I can hold my breath for a long time. So I'm walking down the street, pounding on myself. And if my husband's walking with me, he's pounding on my back where I can't get.
Nice.
And when you stop and then you inhale again, oh my goodness, your whole body is reoxygenated.
I love it.
So about 20 years ago, I was in the hospital for something, and my roommate had a respiratory therapist working with her, and my roommate was told to hold her breath in, and the respiratory therapist is beating on her back, and she's beating on her chest, and I said, that's pranayama. That's an ancient yogic
practice. Yeah. Well, you reminded me, I did this motion because I learned pranayama was putting your middle finger here and inhaling.
Oh, yes.
And then switching, and then inhale up, and then switch. And that's what they can do if they don't want to close their eyes and do the Om. You simply do the practice and inhale. So you're inhaling and exhaling and then switching as another practice. Now, look, I know here's a little joke here. Back in the day, my mom didn't hear about meditation or anything. And when I became a meditator at 17, Saturday morning at 7, this is hilarious. She knows I'm meditating, and she says, when you get done meditating, meditate on these. And she threw a bunch of hot clothes from the dryer on my lap. Thank you, Mom. There may be people in your life who may have something similar to say. When you start doing other practices, the thing is, don't stop your practices. Yeah. And you'll be able to say years later that I know what got me through. I know what sustained me when all else fell away. What sustains you is my belief in the Lord, always, through everything. And that happened as a toddler when I first went to church. That's where it happened. And I even tell people, whether or not it's true or not about religion, it got me here.
Right.
So no attachments to what you're believing, but believe.
Yeah.
So how can I reach you, Melody, for more information?
Well, you mentioned your 3 books that you wrote in 18 months. It took me many years after Logan died.
Look at that.
But I wrote a book called Transforming Death, Creating Sacred Space for the Dying. And it's basically my own experiences because, my mother died when I was 35, my sister at age 40, my son at 42. And then I've lost many in my inner circle. And those during those processes, I was able to do what I call partner with the room. Sometimes it was in a hospital, sometimes a hospice, sometimes a home, but partnering with the room to create sacred space because the environment that someone dies in is really a sacred space and can be enhanced to support the physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual processes of dying. So that's there. And the book also talks some about grief. I also have a website called Transforming Space. And I've had this website, oh goodness, maybe almost 20 years. But, and since the website was created, I have expanded my business from just transforming space to transforming self and transforming loss. So on my website, there's a tremendous amount of information about decluttering and organizing, feng shui, space clearing, coaching and personal clearing, and grief, working through your grief. And so there's lots of free information there, and people can connect with me through my website.
That's perfect. And your website is, again?
transformingspace.com.
Perfect. Okay, great. To get in contact with me, I would love you to go to my Facebook page. Melanie and I will certainly start a Facebook group pretty shortly if you're hearing this before it's set up. But I expect we'll set it up before the end of the week. And so the books I was speaking about, Moving Toward Wholeness, Crying for Joy, Faith Lessons. There's also one on leadership. You can reach me through my website, my professional website, Carver Associates with an XS.com. That's Carver, Carver, Associates, ASSOCIATES.com. And you'll notice when you go to courses, there's a course on resiliency, which really connects most favorably to what we're speaking about. But you can get me there. There's a phone number there. The website's great. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Oh, Joy, it's always so wonderful to connect.
Wait, before you do, I got a song. You ready? I love myself so much. Come on, y'all, sing. So I can love you so much. So you can love you so much. So you can start loving me. One more time. So watch it. Love myself so much that I can love you so much. So you can love you so much. And maybe you will start loving me.